What's good, YouTube? Today is the day Kendrick Lamar has finally released his highly anticipated project, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, after 5 years of it being highly anticipated after his last album, Damn, dropped in 2017. And it got me thinking, where does Kendrick stand among the greats of this generation? Often who we regard as the big three between Drake, Kendrick, and Cole. All these guys have been out since at least 2011. Drake released his first commercial project under Universal in 2009 with So Far Gone. Kendrick released his first project in 2010, and Cole in 2011. Also with an honorable mention of Big Sean. But among this generation, we often regard the big three as Drake, Kendrick, and Cole. And with all of the publicity and all of the eyes and the positive remarks among Kendrick's ability to create a masterpiece, it got me thinking, man, where do they stand among one another as far as activity among the last decade, past 10, 11, 13 years that they've all been active in the scene? So I crunched all the numbers of how active they've been, how many songs they've released, how many features they've done, how many music videos they released. So we're going to go through all of that today. And we're going to talk about the tangibles and intangibles of where they all stand among one another. All the numbers I'm going to speak on are on a commercial basis, or songs that are essentially on DSPs and are able to bring revenue to the artists and have been registered among the Billboard charts over time, had a label behind them that was putting money into it to market the projects, and had large influence on the culture, all of which Cole, Kendrick, and Drake's projects from the very beginning have had. So with that being said, let's start with the man himself who dropped today, Kendrick Lamar. Since 2010, Kendrick has had 8 projects that he's released, 7 of which have been solo albums, and 1 of them was a soundtrack that he executive produced for the Black Panther. 5 songs of which he was featured on. Since 2009, Drake has released a total of 11 projects, 10 of which have been solo projects, and 1 of them which was a collab project with Future, What a Time to Be Alive, in 2015. In that time span, he's had 196 songs on those solo/collab albums, and he's done 172 features. Cole has released a total of 8 projects, 6 of which have been solo projects, and 2 of them have been Dreamville albums, which has been albums that he's essentially executive produced for all of his artists under the Dreamville label. Cole has released 95 solo songs, and he's done 101 features, for a total of 296 songs over time. The next numbers I looked at were the Billboard charting numbers, and this is where it starts to get a little more interesting and starts to get a little bit more lopsided. So we'll start with Kendrick. Since the beginning, Kendrick has had 6 number 1 albums, projecting that Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers will be number 1, which almost guaranteed it will be next week. I think it'll even sell over 300K units. And he's had 50 Hot 100 entries, 8 in the top 10, and he's had 2 number 1s. Drake has had 9 number 1 albums, 262 Hot 100 entries, 55 top 10 entries, and 10 number 1 Hot 100 singles. J. Cole has had 4 number 1 albums, 65 Hot 100 entries, 10 top 10s, and 0 number 1s. The third variable I took into consideration was concert history. So for any fans that are listening to this that are wondering why concerts are important in relation to a music artist, is that concerts are going to show you who your real fans are. Especially in the day and age like now, where someone can be huge on the internet, but they can't bring people out to a concert. Artists that can bring people out to a concert are, for a person to show up at your physical show and they're there physically to show that their appreciation for you and pay $50, $100, whatever the artist is asking for, that's a lot. That fan really likes you. And so how often the artist is active and out there is really important to show how much they are giving back to their fans, essentially. And this category was just about even. Since 2009, Kendrick has had a total of 621 shows. Drake has had a total of 653 shows. And Cole has had a total of 622 shows. So no real differentiation between the three. And the fourth category I use to measure impact among these individuals is reach on YouTube. Because when a music video, especially when you have visual and audio tied among one another, it can have incredible impact for years to come. A good example of this is the See You Again music video by Wiz Khalifa, which at times has been the highest watched video on YouTube of all time. And it is the highest watched music video of all time. It ties in elements of Fast and Furious to it, to where it becomes very sad and emotional. And when you can hit that in somebody, when you can hit emotionally like that, it can have an impact for so long. So I used that, the reach among what these guys have got on YouTube to be the next factor. So Drake stands at number one. He's gotten about 12 billion views on his YouTube channel over time. Kendrick Lamar has gotten about 4.4 billion, and Cole has gotten about 2.5 billion. When it comes down to the tangible numbers and the reach and bit of activity over time, how often the artists have dropped, Billboard charting numbers, reach on YouTube, the tangible numbers, Drake wins. Drake has been the most active and highest engaging artist of this past decade. And he has mastered the ability to capture the mainstream, always been in the headlines. He's been active. And, you know, one thing we can say about Cole and Kendrick is they have been able to drop impactful projects, but they have not always been active. They have had times where they've laid low and not been in the scene. And there's even been articles written about Kendrick where he doesn't even use his phone for months at a time, which is cool. But when it comes down to that artist of the decade conversation, that's where it makes a difference about how active Drake has been. And when it comes down to the numbers and the tangibility, Drake is that dude. He's the guy that has been the artist of this generation. And to showcase how exactly Drake has been more active than Kendrick and Cole, I broke down the numbers of how many songs each of them have released since 2015. Since 2015, Drake has released 130 solo songs, and he's released 202 total with features. Kendrick has released 70 total solo songs and 132 with features. Cole has released 52 solo songs and 96 total with features. But when it comes down to the intangibles, that's where the question comes in of what impact do these guys make in the culture? And I think all three arguably have had a huge impact in different ways, to where you don't know necessarily which one is the best out of the three unless you have an opinion of what you value more. For example, me as a listener, I value activity among the scene. I value what Drake has done because he has not taken a break. And I think you could argue that all these guys have never taken a break, but Drake has been active on the scene. It's made a difference. Also, Drake has dropped 11 projects as opposed to the 8 total projects among the other two. And the main difference of what that speaks of is it's another day that the headlines have been there to where we all get sent back to the music to go listen to it. When it comes down to somebody like Kendrick, he has made music that will stick with people forever, in the regards that he has touched on subjects that are very hard to touch upon: racial inequality, suffering. And for people that hits home to, they'll never leave Kendrick's music. He speaks about deep, meaningful, impactful subjects, and it goes such a long way for the listeners. Drake makes more music for an average person. It's great sounding music sonically for something that isn't quite as complex or isn't quite as touchy to speak upon. It's easier to speak upon and is more highly relatable, and Drake hits in that way. Kendrick also hits in his own way as well. And I view J. Cole as a bit of a hybrid in between, but kind of more shifting more towards Kendrick, as opposed to J. Cole's talking about real stuff. He's going to have real bars in his music, but he's also going to sound great, and he's also going to be great at appealing to an average person as well. And, I think this conversation of who is the greatest among this generation, it really depends on who the listener is. Kendrick is going to be some for, some people. J. Cole is going to be some. Drake is going to have his few. But you ask me personally, numbers aside, Drake's activity, how often he's dropped, the amount of music he's given us just goes such a long way. But I wanted to break this down for you guys, and I want to know, who do you guys think is the artist of this generation? Drake, Kendrick, Cole, or somebody else? Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like the video. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.